Up to now, as we've read through the Gospel of Mark, we've seen the disciples struggle to believe that Jesus can do great things. We've seen them struggle to connect the dots between what Jesus does and who he is. Jesus himself becomes exasperated with their lack of understanding, but really, they're just like us. I doubt we would have picked up on it yet either. That's because throughout the Gospel, there is one great big event that hasn't happened yet. And this event is the key to understanding. What is this event? Let's find out. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Friday, February 3rd, 2023. Of a whole variety of features of the Gospel of Mark that we've seen, I want to touch on two today. The first, of course, is the fact that the disciples seem so clueless. I've made that point over and over again. The other thing I want to touch on, which I've also pointed out several times, though not every time we've seen it, and it occurs in today's daily lectionary reading, is the really important one. Let me read the story and then tell you what I'm talking about. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John and led them up a high mountain apart by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his clothes became dazzling white, such as no one on earth could bleach them. And there appeared to them Elijah with Moses, who were talking with Jesus. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He did not know what to say, for they were terrified. Then a cloud overshadowed them, and from the cloud there came a voice, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." Suddenly, when they looked around, they saw no one with them anymore, but only Jesus. As they were coming down the mountain, he ordered them to tell no one about what they had seen until after the Son of Man had risen from the dead. So they kept the matter to themselves, questioning what this rising from the dead could mean. Once again, something extraordinary happens. This time it's not a healing or an exorcism, and it's not a miracle along the lines of calming storms or feeding crowds with a ridiculously small amount of food. This time, it is the event that we call the Transfiguration. Jesus takes just 3 of the disciples with him up a mountain, and there he is transfigured before them. His appearance changes, his clothes become dazzling white, and Moses and Elijah appear with him. And then the voice of God from a cloud announces, "This is my Son, the beloved. Listen to him." And then poof, they're all alone again. But notice what Jesus says next. He tells them not to tell anyone what they've seen. This is the so-called messianic secret we have seen over and over again in the gospel. Jesus heals someone and then tells them not to tell anyone else. But now we have an added bit of detail, the reason why Jesus tells folks not to tell anyone else what has happened to them, at least not yet. He commands the disciples not to say anything about this until after he is resurrected. If the disciples have appeared dense up to this point, remember, they haven't lived through the death and resurrection of Jesus yet. And even when Jesus tells them what's going to happen, they don't want to hear it because they still don't know what it means. Understanding fully and completely who Jesus is impossible without witnessing his death and resurrection. Up to now, crowds have just seen him as a great healer. He is that, but that's not really it. His disciples have seen him as a great teacher, and he is that, but that's not really it either. They've all seen his command over nature and even over death itself, but even that's not it. And they can even identify him as the promised Messiah. All of these things are true, but they are not complete. They're not the whole picture. Not until we witness his death for our sins and his resurrection offering us new life do we finally and fully see Jesus for who he really is. He is the Son of the living God. He is the Lord of life and the one who defeats the power of sin and death. He is the one in whom God has finally and at long last broken these powers and their hold over our lives. Even now, at this point in the gospel, people will not fully understand, not even the disciples. But we have finally been given the answer to the riddle of the messianic secret. We can't finally understand Jesus apart from his death and resurrection. Tomorrow, a grieved father utters our ongoing plea. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.